You're listening to the Platform Launchers podcast. I'm John Stange, and it's great to have you with us, as always, this week as we talk about building and growing and monetizing your online platform. We talk about taking your passion, turning it into a platform, and helping that become your paycheck. And that's something we get excited about doing. If you know my story, you know that over the years, that's something that I learned to do, and it's been extremely helpful. So I've been sharing content and earning a living from sharing that content, and hopefully being a blessing to others in the process. This week here on the podcast, I'm going to ask the question, what can you talk about for 3 years? Now, I know some people are particularly talkative, and maybe you know some people in your life that you think could go 3 years straight, but that's not exactly what I'm getting at. We're going to be talking about podcasting and messaging and the importance of being able to identify your niche topic that you can talk about really for 3 years without growing sick of it, without losing any enthusiasm for it. So that's going to be our theme this week. But before we get into our theme, there are two members of our members club that I want to highlight this week because both of them have books, one of which just came out. And so first of all, Phil Whitebloom, could you just tell us really quickly about your latest project and what just came out this week?
Hi, John. Thank you very much. It's great to be on your podcast. So the name of my book is Handling Objections, Clues for Closing the Sale. And it's a book that is focused on business, and everybody has to deal with objections, questions, and by successfully overcoming objections, it really brings you a long way closer to having an understanding with people and to closing the sale. And by the way, people really only object to the things that are important to them as long as it's a real objection. So that's where clues for closing the sale comes from. So when somebody's objecting to it, you know it's important, pay attention.
Excellent. So that's Phil Whitebloom. And Phil, again, the new book is called Handling Objections, correct?
Right. Yes.
And as we're speaking right now, I mean, it's only been out for 24 hours, but you were telling me it was charting and it was doing really well.
Yeah, it's amazing. So it's fun to watch. And so it was a long time in the process and getting it to this point. And then now it's a lifelong journey from here because it never goes away. So I'm looking
Awesome.
forward to promoting it and helping people because that's what it's all about. And that's why it was created.
Excellent. Very good. Thank you so much, Phil. Phil Whitebloom. The book is called Handling Objections. And Pat, tell us about your book as well.
Well, been a professional. I'm a lifelong photographer, been a professional for more than 30 years. And a lot of photography, I've done nature photography. So I spent a lot of time outside in the outdoors, and I've learned that, I've drawn near to God when I'm out in nature, connect with him, and just know his presence. And he's taught me a lot through my experiences in the outdoors. And I've written a book called Drawing Near, Meeting God in His Creation. It's a devotional, and it's got photographs I've taken of God's creation, along with Bible verses about nature, and devotional thoughts to help us leave the busyness and the madness of this world to draw near to God and to meet him in secluded places. And so devotionals they're in depth, they have a lot of meaning to them, but they're also personal that we could relate to in our own lives. So, and my name is Pasquale Mingarelli. My book's available anywhere you buy books online, and it's called Drawing Near, Meeting God in His Creation.
I love it. Thank you so much, Pasquale, aka Pat.
Yeah.
We're so grateful for you sharing that. And again, congrats to Phil Whitebloom as well on the release of his book this week. It's super exciting here in the group where, and I tell you, I record this podcast in front of our group. So our group, many members from our group are live here on the call. So we have a fun time doing this. But one of the things we do each week is we celebrate each other's wins and we try and propel each other forward. And one of our big themes this month is to just kind of highlight some of the things that others in the group are doing. And so I wanted to highlight some of these members in our group who've done some really special things. I know a lot of people have thought about writing books through the years, and these are two gentlemen that have succeeded at doing that. And I hope that if you're listening to the podcast or if you're watching us on YouTube, that you succeed at that as well, if that's something that's on your list of ambitions. Now, I mentioned just a moment ago that our theme this week is this idea, and I'm just asking you as a question, what could you talk about for 3 years? I often joke that when I like something, I am likely to talk about it nonstop. This is true. It's also true if I dislike something. I might be likely to talk about it a little too much as well. But I do talk a lot about the things that I like. So that's true when it comes to the coffee that I drink. It's true when it comes to the restaurants that I visit. It's true when it comes to new music that I've discovered. All of those things. If I like something, I tend to talk about it. So not long ago, this was, I don't know, I guess maybe about a year ago or so, I was actually driving to an early morning meeting, and it wasn't a far drive. It was less than 10 minutes away. So instead of queuing up a podcast and listening to, something that was longer form, I thought, I'm just going to listen to some music. And so I put some music on instead of listening to a podcast because it was only a short drive. And almost immediately, I had it set up. I have a subscription to YouTube Music, YouTube Premium. And so that has a music subscription to it. And YouTube will just randomly suggest songs that it thinks I'm going to like based on other things that I like. And I discovered a new song that morning. Now it's by an artist that I was already familiar with and had been listening to for years, but I discovered a new song. YouTube Music recommended a new song to me that morning, and I kid you not, within a few hours, I am pretty sure that everyone that I'd ever heard of or ever met or ever even remotely was introduced to was then introduced to that song because I texted a link to the song to my wife and kids. I was like, "This song is awesome. I love this." I had some conversations with different people about that song during the course of the day. Then I was like, you know what? I like that song enough that I'm going to share a link to the video on my social media. And so I did that. I put that up on Facebook. Basically, it was one of those things where I was like, I like this so much. I'm going to tell everyone I know about how great it is. Now, I have no idea if other people liked it as much as I did. It's very much a subjective thing, but I let people know. But I also know that if I was forced to listen to that song on repeat for a long time, I probably would get sick of it. So it's kind of an interesting dilemma. I like the song. I told everybody about it that morning. But if you made me listen to that song only or constantly, I could probably eventually get sick of it. And I think that story is kind of a useful introduction and something worth considering if you're thinking about starting a podcast, if you're thinking about starting a show. And I could even broaden this concept this week and say, even if you're thinking of starting an online platform in general that just has a podcast as part of it, or a blog that's part of it, or messaging tools of other kinds that are part of it, it's useful to think about this. Is this something you would get sick of? Because the reason I say that is because I am convinced, and this is both by experience and observation, but I am convinced that it takes multiple years for a new podcast, for anyone's show, to really hit its momentum point. And so it's probably wise to ask right at the outset, if you're starting a podcast, if you have ambitions to get something like that going, ask yourself the question, what can I talk about for 3 years without getting sick of it? Literally, what could I talk about for 3 years without getting sick of it? Now, I bring that up partially because of experience, and like I said, also by observation. But if you remember my story, and I've shared that here on the podcast before, my very first podcast centered around the subject of leadership development. I love the topic of leadership development. I love reading books on leadership. I admire various leaders. It's a very important topic to me. But it isn't the only thing I like to talk about. In fact, there are a variety of things I like to talk about, that being one of them. And so when I first got into podcasting and I started recording content, I started with that leadership show, and I recorded very consistently for about 3 months. And then after about 3 months of recording content, I started to feel like I had said most of what I wanted to say on the subject. I started scratching my head thinking, I don't know what else I could say about leadership that I haven't said in these episodes over the course of the past few months. And so my motivation to create new episodes actually started to fade. And when I realized that I wasn't going to be consistent with that topic anymore, again, even though I'm quite passionate about good leadership, But when I realized I wasn't going to be consistent with creating content for that show, I decided, all right, if I'm not going to be consistent, it's time to end the show. So I ended it and I segued into other podcasts. And at present, I host 4 podcasts, and I've been leading each of these shows for multiple years, and certainly happy to do so. But I'm saying this all to you to just say, if you're going to create a show, I think you need to give some serious thought to what you would like to talk about for years and years and years. And can you do it without growing tired of the subject? You need to pick a subject that you're truly passionate about, because your enthusiasm or your boredom with your subject is going to become very evident to your listening audience in short order. Now, I just mentioned that I host 4 shows. If you've been listening to this podcast for a while, you're probably familiar with the references that I've made to the other shows as well. But basically, 3 of my 4 shows allow me to express my faith in various ways. They are faith-based podcasts. The content in them is faith-based content. And that the primary information that I've been creating, or the primary online content that I've been creating for years, falls into that category. And I like the variety. And I'm grateful for the fact that I get to do these 3 shows, these 3 faith-based shows that allow me to speak about a subject that I will literally never get tired about. Literally, in eternity, I will still be excited about these issues related to faith. I also host this show. And what do we talk about on this show? Well, on this show, we talk about business topics. We talk about messaging topics. We talk about building online platforms, building, growing, monetizing online platforms. And in fact, that is a subject that I love as well. It fits very well with my personality. It fits very well with my life experiences. And the subject matter literally at times just kind of flows off my tongue because it's something I genuinely care about. And it's something that I discovered years ago. I have a personal desire to help other people figure this out. So I like creating this content. And I bring up my examples to now point the finger at you. If you're watching us on YouTube, I'll point right into the camera, right at you, even though that might be a little bit rude. If you're listening to us on a podcasting app, I'm just virtually pointing at you, I guess you could say. But if you create a show that connects to subject matter that you do not easily tire of speaking about, you are much more likely to succeed in this online space. And you'd think that that would be a very obvious statement, but it really isn't, because there are a lot of people who I've seen through the years, they just kind of create shows to get something going, or because they're maybe trying to market a specific product or market a particular service or something like that. And now after a while, they're like, I don't know if I'm still interested in talking about this, and they feel stuck. And they even maybe want to get out of doing it. They sort of feel obligated because they got something going, and they think, I don't know, am I allowed to step away from this? Well, whether they give themselves permission immediately or not, if they've lost enthusiasm for their subject, eventually they will stop producing episodes and their shows will fade away. They call that pod fading. Their shows will literally just fade away. If you're listening to us right now, I don't want that to happen to you. If you're listening to this podcast, I don't want you to fade your shows unless it's time for them to fade. Everything's got a season, right? But generally speaking, if you're getting into this, I don't want you to start something that you're going to lose interest in. And I would say for that to be the case, if you're going to start a show, you need to make sure that you build your show on the right foundation. Build it on the right foundation. So this is what I want you to do. A little bit of a homework assignment if you're listening to the podcast right now. I want you to pay very close attention to your conversations this week. And I want you to note a few different things. I want you to note, what questions do you love being asked? There are certain questions that if people ask me those questions, I love being asked those things, and I will talk on and on and on and on until I make people even sick of what I'm talking about. But there are certain questions I love being asked, so I want you to answer that question. What questions during the course of your week did you like being asked when you had conversations with people? What did you like talking about? Or maybe another way we could phrase this, what conversations do you purposely join because they're interesting to you? And then on the reverse of that, what conversations do you attempt to get out of? We could also ask this, what are you able to talk about at length with no preparation whatsoever and no loss of enthusiasm? Is there a subject that people think you're an expert on? Those are the things that I want you to wrestle with this coming week. If you're trying to figure out a show, if you're trying to come up with a show concept or build an online platform around it, it's important to pay attention to your conversations and really wrestle with the things that people ask you, that you want to be asked, that you don't like talking about, the conversations that you do join, the conversations you choose not to join. Is there a subject that people think you're an expert on? Is there something you could talk about with no preparation and no loss of enthusiasm, and you could talk about it at length because it's something that you delight in so much? And once you figure out your ideal topic, whatever that topic may be, get ready to communicate it passionately, not passively, in your upcoming episodes. Few pieces of advice. Once you start recording, do this. First of all, be clear. So you figured out your topic. You're committed to this 3-year journey of producing episodes, and you want to be passionate about what you're saying. So start off by being clear. Clarify your thoughts, clarify your ideas, share your passion. Think about why you love what you love and let other people know about it. Be specific about what excites you, what you find most interesting. People find your enthusiasm catchy. It's something that ends up inspiring them. So be very clear about what you're doing and share from that kind of perspective or that kind of heart motivation. And I would say, as a second thought here, keep showing enthusiasm because passion is contagious. So let your enthusiasm shine. Let it shine through. Even when you talk about your passion, use expressive body language, use an expressive tone in your voice as you convey excitement. Because again, this isn't just like a one-day journey. This is a multi-year journey as you're talking about the things that interest you most. Something else I would encourage you to do as you share this passion over the next few years, use personal examples. Now, I'm a little bit cautious when I do this because I don't want people to think, oh, he just is talking on and on and on about himself. That would be a nightmare. But the other thing is I've only lived one life. So most of my examples come from things that I've experienced or things that have happened to me. And so I do incorporate personal examples into my teaching, my podcasting, the things that I'm sharing. And I want to encourage you to use personal examples, particularly in the realm of podcasting. People want to hear that sort of stuff. People want to hear your story. And it can be helpful to use these concrete examples when you're trying to teach other people or helping people understand what you're passionate about. So these stories could be just, personal stories, anecdotes, things like that that have happened to you, things that you've experienced that support your passion. A couple other things. Be relatable, practice active listening, and be authentic. So when I say be relatable, just understand that people aren't always looking for you to be the nerdiest expert they've ever heard, but they do believe that you're an expert. And so be relatable as you share about your passion, but also practice some active listening. Now, that's a little bit tricky in a solo show, but if you're doing some interviews, you want to listen to the people that you bring on and be active and interested in the things that they say, but you also want to make sure that you're demonstrating authenticity as you do so, because people can pick up on that. Podcasting tends to be one of the forms of media where people trust the host more so than others because of this exchange of ideas that tends to come from a place of authenticity. Now, the beautiful thing, as you begin this 3-year journey and as you're thinking about the topics that you're going to be talking about, is that when you start a podcast, you've now opened up the door to a venture that gives you an outlet to communicate your passion and find an audience that's ready to listen. You might find people that you encounter over the course of your daily life who laugh at what interests you. But when you venture into this world of online content creation, you're connecting with people all throughout the world. And even if your topic is super, super niche, there's a listening audience that's likely to value every single word that you speak. And I would encourage you to connect with them enthusiastically and authentically. I think it's a special opportunity. I think it's a unique privilege to be able to serve people with your knowledge. There are things that you know that others would love to know and be encouraged by. I also think you'll experience an improvement to your overall quality of life once you consistently start utilizing this outlet. I think there are a lot of people that keep so many things inside They don't share it, even though they've got valuable things to share. Well, it's very edifying when you start discovering that the things that you've learned and the things that you started to share with others are providing benefit to the lives of other people. I have to say, I can honestly say that I've received I don't know, it's just like a general satisfaction in life that I've noticed has come from basically a decade now of producing podcast content every single day for almost a decade. And I would even say that in some ways, I feel like it's been like a boost of confidence that I've experienced since starting my shows. Satisfaction with life growing, confidence boosting, because I've been given this opportunity to serve others in a way that they seem to appreciate. And I want to encourage you, if you've been thinking about creating a podcast, I was talking to one of our members just a little bit ago about a podcast that she's going to be working on. I'm right now teaching a course at the university level to help people build podcasts and learn more about podcast development and production. And I just want to encourage you, if you're listening to this podcast right now, if you're watching me on YouTube, and you've just been thinking about this, just start with this idea. What can I talk about for 3 years? What do people think that I'm an expert on? And then start producing content on that and see where it goes and commit to it for the long haul. And if you don't lose enthusiasm speaking about your subject, if you could be clear, if you could be enthusiastic, if you could be helpful, I imagine it's going to be a source of great joy for you as you have the opportunity to serve people with your knowledge and with your experience. That has been my experience since getting involved in podcasting. I know several others, some of which are live on the call here with me, that could testify to the same thing. If you decide to get into podcasting, I would love to hear from you. There's a way that we can encourage you, even if you'd like to maybe even pop in as a guest for one of our live calls that we do here with the group and join us when we record this podcast live. We'd love to have you on. Just send me a message via email to john@platformlaunchers.com. john@platformlaunchers.com. I'd love to hear from you. Likewise, you can check out a bunch of things we have over at our website that can be immensely helpful to you as you build, grow, and monetize your online platform. Just head over to platformlaunchers.com and you can visit the whole library of content that we have available over there. Podcasting, that's my thoughts on it for this week. 3-year trajectory. I hope it works for you. That's certainly something that I've been highly invested in that's worked well for me, and many of our other members can testify it's worked well for them as well. But that's it for us this week. Thanks again for tuning in. It's always a pleasure to be able to spend this time with you. We look forward to catching up with you again right here next week. And in the meantime, I hope you have a wonderful week, and we'll talk to you in a mere 7 days. Have a great one.